Hey there. So, yesterday I spoke very much about the different layers of traditions surrounding the time leading up to the idea of the Lionsgate or the Lionsgate portal. I also explained a little bit about why I'm a much bigger fan of natural time than I am of arbitrary dates, like the idea of a particular date meaning something, something specific, something in particular. And I took some time to sort of explain how I think Lionsgate has become important to a lot of people. The idea that it's aligning in a particular direction, or that there is the return of Sirius. There is also the return of Orion, which comes a few days before. All of these are really rich in symbology. Add to that we've just had the Celtic Festival of Lammas, and you can see that there are several themes all weaving together. The idea of harvest, the fact that 8-8 falls at 15 degrees Leo and is exactly between the summer solstice, I'm talking northern hemisphere now, but summer solstice and also the autumn equinox. This is the midpoint, and so it is a turning point of sorts. If you want to know more about my reasonings, just check out the forecast from yesterday. It's all chaptered, so you can flick through and get to the bits that you want. But what I did say yesterday was I was going to talk very much from my heart in interpretation to do with the Egyptian story of Isis and Osiris, and also their baby Horus. So that's what I'm going to do today. Before I actually go there, I do want to pay some attention to the fact that there are two very helpful aspects taking place on Saturday, exact ones. And that would be that we've got the moon in an exact sextile to Saturn. Not right at the start of the day, but during the course of the day, the moon and Saturn are coming together in a sextile. And pretty much at the same time, the moon is going to be in a sextile with the sun, with Isis, later on exactly with Osiris. And it's already in a square to Horus as we start the day. So I will also put some context around that. Of course, on Friday the 7th, we had this lovely exact trine between Saturn and the sun. And I was talking about it as a moment of feeling really quite adult, like we are taking responsibility for patterns. We realize that we can't carry on with a particular pattern. And so it's like a choice. Are we going to straighten up? Are we going to put in the necessary work to get the results we're looking for? So that's underpinning it. And the moon in the sextile to both the sun and Saturn is actually making what's known as a minor grand trine, which is very helpful because it's actually giving a lot of emphasis to working hard. Sextiles are hard working aspects, but they bring in lots of opportunities. So I think we're going to get opportunities when we see that we can be reliable and responsible and really dedicated to something. Then all of a sudden, I think work is going to come into play. So I think that's great. So that's one of the things I think is part of the Lionsgate coding. And of course, that's based on the idea of a arbitrary date, that there is one date that's stronger than others. And again, like I explained yesterday, in terms of when Orion returns and Sirius returns in respect of Egyptian mythology, that's really dependent on the latitude that you sit in. And so that's another reason why I think that Lionsgate is predominantly like set on 8-8. That's a numerical portal, but it's not necessarily an astrological one. However, 8-8 with the midpoint in between the solstice and the equinox, to me, is suggesting a turning point of sorts, that we've had the maximum growth period and that we are now coming in, things are starting to mellow, ripen, and just, it is time to bring in the harvest. And so there is this changing energy going on. When we add in the Egyptian context, things are going to really change. And unusually, at the time of this particular 8-8, asteroid Isis is exactly in a conjunction with the sun. I mean, who'd have thought it? I mean, what are the chances? And also Osiris is just 2 degrees away. So this is absolutely a hotbed of interpretation, this is a very, very strong point indeed. And in fact, I fast forwarded it. I checked out where Isis and Osiris were next year, and the year after that, the year after that. I did it for 5 years. And yeah, they weren't like clinging to the sun on 8-8. So this is highly unusual. And as such, I think this is pretty special, given that we've got a total solar eclipse coming up within a matter of days, 4 days later, and that's going to be highlighting 20 degrees in the sign of Leo. I would say if you've got strong fixed energy in your chart, a strong Leo energy in your chart, especially if you've got a stellium in Leo, or if you've got lots in fire signs that are in a trine with Leo, this is going to be important. But I would absolutely look out for an angle. If you've got an angle in this part of your chart, this is going to really emphasize big, deep-seated change coming in. And given that 8 is a symbol of infinity, and there's 2 8s, which actually, if you put together, would give us a master number. The infinity symbol is very much showing the completeness of things, and also showing the fertility of things, showing that everything is always in a loop, always in a cycle, always in abundance. In fact, 8 is a very strong number associated with wealth and mastery. And so, yeah, this is a very, very powerful time. So anyway, let's dive in. So yesterday I shared the story about Isis and Osiris. And so they were lovers in some themes. They were brother and sister, but they were devoted to each other. And Osiris's brother Set ripped him apart, like totally ripped him apart, pulled him apart at the seams, buried his parts in different parts of the world or Egypt. And Isis, bereft, went looking for all the parts, found all of them apart from the phallus, fashioned, God knows how, a fake penis, stitched Osiris back up. They consummated their love, and then they were able to birth Horus. Now, there are so many different stories about gods and revered characters being ripped apart and new life coming from that. And in many respects, isn't that what happens in a garden around the time of harvest, where we start pulling things apart, and we might take a little seedling, we might take a cutting, and new life springs forwards. As I mentioned yesterday, Osiris, he never came to rule, he was never king again on mainland Earth. He was, after that point, he became the lord of the underworld because he'd already experienced death. And so he was there as a guide to help people going through their death and their transformation. And so seeing these three together, we've got a story, and this is what I want to share with you. The story of devotion and dedication, putting something back together again after an ego death, and what grows forwards after this. So this is a story of succession. And it's also a story of letting go of anything that is not part of your succession plan. And so I think all of these archetypes live within us. I know that if I was in Isis's shoes, I would absolutely move mountains to be able to do what she did. And I think we've all been Osiris, where we feel like our ego and our persona and our life as it is, it just cannot persist. It cannot persist in the shape that it's been. Like, there's a part of us absolutely needs to die so that something else can come forwards. And then we've got Horus, their baby, their love child. What grows from your dedication, your devotion, and also that consistency to allow and trust and faith to allow yourself to go through that feeling of being ripped apart so that something really fresh and new can come forward. So this is deep. Now, before we go there, I want, seeing as 15 Leo is such a pivotal point in this journey, I want to examine the Sabian symbol for it. So let's have a look at that now. As ever, I'm looking at the Sabian symbols from Linda Hill. I really, really love her website. I also would say it's worth getting her book. There's a lot more information in her book. It's definitely worth doing. Go to www.sabiansymbols.com. Now, for the Lion's Gate, the midpoint that seems so important, and also Isis, the meaning is brilliant sunshine just after a storm. This symbol implies situations where storms come through one's life on a periodic basis, sweeping away elements of life that have been clogging up situations, clearing the air and resolving issues. It also shows the ability to be able to pick up oneself after some difficulty or crisis. The trick is to notice the gift of the brilliant sunshine as the clouds part and life takes on a calmer, happier tone. The worst is probably over and situations can resolve themselves. Things dry out and recovery begins. There is probably also more cleaning up and work to be done, but one should enjoy the release and pleasure of the relief that follows a storm. The warmth of renewal, recovery, religious experiences, good news after bad, relief and joy, the sun breaking through, contrasting moods up 1 minute, down the next. Fearing, and this is where things show you if you're out of balance with it, fearing that storms will soon return, being stuck in fear, invoking arguments for the reward of making up, on-off behavior, bipolar, weird behavior. So to me, this is symbolizing that this harvest period, this period of standing in our power, like if you think of Leo, which is very much about being central in our life, it's not about self-abandonment, it's about taking up space and feeling comfortable doing that. So to me, this is a degree that is implying it's okay to take up space. And whatever has preceded this period in time is due to change. You know, something is picking up. Now, if we also put in Isis and her story, the idea that her ego or her alter ego's body has been ripped apart, pulled apart at the seams, to me, this is giving her hope that she can reintegrate herself or the person or the situation that she's trying to reintegrate. All is not lost. Even if everything gets scattered into lots of different pieces, there is an integration that's completely possible. So to me, I'm seeing a storm that has come in and ravaged us and pulled us apart and moved us around, thrown us around, shaken us up. But Isis here is reminded, actually, there's brilliant sunshine after this storm. This was a necessary part of the journey. So to me, this looks actually quite helpful. It's interesting as well that religious experiences come up, because to me, that's indicative of having faith in the recovery, knowing that you're on the right path. And, you know, sometimes when we're in a maelstrom of our own, I know I'm up and down fairly frequently, especially this year. It's just been pretty heavy going. And, you know, I've been checking in a lot with my students that I work with on a really, really regular basis and hearing their stories as well. You know, I see that lots of people are up, down. It feels like a time of rapid release when we have these realizations about ourselves. And in that realization, it's like, oh, I thought I was like this. Now I realize I'm like this, and we're letting go of things. And some of those bring pain, some of them bring a lot of pain, and others can be quite a relief when we realize we don't have to hold that pattern anymore. So yeah, I really see that what's going on right now is a deeper recovery, and maybe the sense that actually we've done a hell of a lot this year. We've done a lot of clearing, and actually you've probably cleared the worst of it for now. It looks good. Now, if we also look at what's been born from Horus and his arrival. Now, he's in the sign of Virgo, which is very different. You know, like for now, like our development, the storm we've been living through, it may have felt quite public. It may have felt very loud and obvious, which are some of the more negative sides to the Leo energy. It can get a little bit too much. Mostly, I think the energy is playful, it's charming, it's fun, it's central, it takes up space, but it can get a bit overbearing. So I think, you know, what we've been through has probably felt quite public or felt very obvious, like you can't hide your feelings. It's been hard to hide your development. But where Horus is in the sign of Virgo is indicating that actually it might just be that our onward journey is something that we reflect on privately ourselves. We don't have to be sharing it all the time. We don't have to be bringing it up as an example to share with people. I take that, you know, I see that in myself. Also, Virgo is very sort of dedicated to the perfection, you know, the honoring of your journey and tweaking it. Virgo is very good at doing little tweaks here, little tweaks there, just the right tweak at the right time. So anyway, let's have a look at what this message is saying. So it's saying two heads looking out and beyond the shadows. So this symbol implies the ability to see things from many sides, not just one. You may be able to or need to see things from two perspectives. This can be a marvelous asset, particularly with the Virgo ability to discriminate and make observations. This symbol can also imply split personalities or not being able to make up one's mind. Further, it can show situations where two people are checking each other out. That's interesting. If you're single, but aren't able to or allowed to show themselves, they're beyond the shadows. This symbol asks that you look beyond situations and into the light. People may be afraid to take a chance just looking out and not moving forwards. Duality of observation, people peering and peeking, spying, secret agencies, private detectives, the media, paparazzi, conspiracy theories, voyeurism, cross-eyed. That's interesting, isn't it? That so much about duplicity, secret agencies, spying, conspiracy theories, and media have all come up because the world can seem really, really crazy and highly polarized. And to me, this is indicating that the polarization is likely to persist, but we're being invited to see both sides and maybe not make up our minds so fully because there are bigger stories going on behind the scenes that we might not be privy to. Again, I put myself in this category because, you know, I have my own thoughts, as I'm sure you do too. And, you know, it's very hard to get out of your thoughts, especially if you're surrounded by people that have very similar thoughts to you. It can be like being in an echo chamber where we're always constantly agreed with by other people that think like us. And so we just think that our views are obviously right because everyone thinks like us. But then we see that maybe not everyone does think like us. Maybe there are other viewpoints. Even if they seem crazy, like conspiracy theories, is there a potential truth to be had? And so whatever Horus is birthing us for, and remember I was saying Virgo is about perfection and tweaking and not making grand changes, but changing the thing that makes the best practical sense, that makes things fit. And that brings me to something like two heads looking out and beyond the shadows. So this is suggesting that some of what we've been birthing right now has had us in the shadows. We felt very much locked away in the shadows. Maybe we've only got the information. I'm seeing the shadows as maybe like the echo chamber. But two heads are looking out. We need two heads. We need to look at both, or not maybe two, but maybe three or four different authorities that come up within ourselves, and to be able to see things fully, because until we're able to do that, we might not be able to birth the reality we're trying to birth. So to me, this is actually, I don't want to say confounding, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think we all get very cozy and comfortable in our views, and we don't often come across Sabian symbols, or I haven't noticed any big ones this year that have spoken specifically about secret agencies, private detectives, paparazzi, media, and the role they play, which is huge, and conspiracy theories, and being like cross-eyed because it's like, what the hell do I believe in? So buckle up is what I'm thinking here, because to me this is sounding that it could get quite difficult. And maybe we might have some of our views challenged, not necessarily directly through media, but we might find that a view that we've held really faithfully, taken from a different context, you might just want to drop it. So for instance, you know, there might be an exception to what you believe. So you might believe, I mean, especially with Pluto and Neptune and Uranus working in their very sort of exact aspects right now. I think there's a lot going on right now about death, divinity, and the right to choose and independence. And so I think there are lots and lots of different themes going on. at the same time about the right to choose, about the right to live, the right to die, the right to make the decision. And most likely where we've made our first decision from, that felt like, okay, this is what I believe. I believe this, and like a concept. But I think with this coming in, I wonder if as we peek out the shadows, or as the light comes glaring in on us, I also get the feeling that all of a sudden things might just totally open up, and it could be quite bewildering or blinding, you know. It might be that our viewpoint, if we stick to it completely and it gets expanded, it might go out of context. We might realize that some of the things we've believed in maybe work under one context but not under another. And those kind of nuances change things, because it's very easy. And I think the media have had a part to play on all sides of every different belief system possible. The media have sold these ideas, and I don't know if you've seen, I've started a new series called The Architecture of Time, to look at some of the longer aspects we've got going on, in particular things with Pluto and Neptune. And I'm going to be examining the different relationships of pairs of planets, in particular the outers, and later including Jupiter and Chiron and Saturn, because I think they're telling us about the architecture of time. What I'm seeing here is we have, since the big conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, around the time of the COVID phenomenon, we have been absolutely encouraged to believe it's this way or this way. There's only two things, and this argument fits in here, and its definition is very tight, and it doesn't include this, this, and this, and this. And you know, if you bring in those extra things, it's like, why are you bringing this in? Are you a this denier or that denier, or are you pro this? So I think the media has had a huge role to play in terms of shepherding our viewpoints, and also shepherding how we can hold a conversation with somebody and be invited into conversations and be able to like have a conversation without feeling particularly triggered. Just that we can see that somebody's objective truth might actually be very different to somebody else's, and when we sit, we realize actually we're human first, and our ideologies come somewhat after that. You know, it's being human is the most important thing. So yeah, this is interesting, that this is a symbol. So Horus is what's being born out of what we're going through right now. And to me, this is suggesting that the seeing more sides of arguments and seeing a more expanded viewpoint is something that's going to come in. Now, is that through our own choice, or is that because of what's going on with the media, that it's going to be forcing things down our throat? Do you know what? It's probably a bit of both. But given that this is a symbol that's coming up right now, based on the Lion's Gate, the idea of the Egyptian mythology that's also absolutely celebrated around this time as well, to me, this is suggesting that Horus's position is showing that whether we're actively engaged in other viewpoints, or we're the recipient of like a bamboozlement of information, like, you know, massive brainwashing, which I think we've all been subject to me, we're coming into a time where polarity is going to get examined from multiple perspectives. So if we go back to the Isis idea, then the brilliant sunshine after the storm, to me this is suggesting we've been thrown around a lot. And in being thrown around a lot, some of our thoughts and feelings have been loosened somewhat. They've been wrestled out of the tight grip that they've had on us. And so to me this is suggesting that there's some relief for us to not hold on to things so tightly, to realize there's always a different context underneath things, and to recognize that things can improve, which is now making me wonder what the ego death is. So I actually want to go straight to another symbol. I actually want to look at the symbol for Osiris. So what was the ego that we've been letting go of? Let's have a look at that one now. So this is interesting because I honestly thought I was just going to look at two symbols, like the one for Isis with the devotion and the dedication, and also Horus, like what is being birthed from this for us as human beings, and also at a personal level. But this is suggesting the death of the ego. This is Osiris, where Osiris was ripped apart and came back and was the lord of the underworld. So make of that what you will. Osiris in mythology was known as a king until he was ripped apart by his brother, and then he became the lord of the underworld. So he never retained his title. So this is interesting. Like, where have you got an ego death, like a title that you've had that you're letting go of, and maybe now you're providing safe passage from a different perspective. Maybe that part of you is now operating underneath the scenes, behind the scenes. So anyway, let's have a look at this. So a chemist conducts an experiment for his students. This symbol implies being willing to try something new, a new discovery, something different, and to step outside the square. The message, whether you're a participant or an observer, is to pay attention and attend to details. Going by the tried and true scientific model that sticks to doing experiments exactly the same way over and over only leads to the same result. A mix of new ingredients can lead to new creations and can lead to surprising results. Even if you're unsure of the outcomes, being willing to take risks can lead to interesting possibilities. Be sure of the mix of ingredients, though, as some are dangerous and unpredictable. Alchemy, radical educations, wisdom passed on, putting things to the test, teachers taking chances on outcomes for students, the thrill of discovery, leading by example. That's interesting. Because I am aware of, I don't really watch the news as such, but I do pick up on things from social media. And I am aware of things going on with Fauci right now. So it's interesting, isn't it? You know, talking about a chemist, aka a scientist, going by tried and true model and doing experiments the same way brings the same result. There's an idea that maybe an experiment's been going on. I don't know. It's quite fascinating, isn't it? How they speak so literally. And also if that ego has been ripped apart, and Horus is coming up in Virgo, which is very much about natural health and healing, and two minds and peeking out of the darkness. To me, that could be talking to us about the nature of health as we see it. You know, has the scientific experiment, is that still where we're going? You know, are there other forms of healing that should be explored? Who knows? Virgo is absolutely very much about natural health and healing and natural laws. So it's interesting, very interesting. But I also think, where have you been playing an experiment in your own life? Where have you been playing it too much? And getting the same result, and that's like the echo chamber. It comes back to you. So it's like that samey methodical person. Maybe it's time for them to go. Maybe it's time now for you to conduct an experiment, to do something that feels a lot more in alignment with you. Maybe something that's coming from your core, or a hidden part of you that's not quite so obvious, and maybe something that doesn't have approval for. Because, you know, when things are hidden, we often keep them hidden, like our traits. We often hide the things that we are a little bit embarrassed about, like the things that we might think or feel, or the talents we might have that we're too afraid to share. It might be because we don't have approval. So that to me seems to be a big thing. So who knows? And then where we know we're in dangerous territory is when things are always by rules of the book: inertia and suppression of creative ideas, narrow viewpoints, being afraid of outcomes, skepticism, conservative science. Wow, again, that kind of fits in with a lot of themes going on right now. When I piece these things together, I can see where tried and tested things that I've done over and over and over again might be better. It might be better for me to be a bit more creative, a bit more spontaneous. So I'm going to check my assumptions, but I don't know what this means to you. But where it's going, I would say we're coming into a time where we might want to test. We might want to test a couple of different options at the same time. You know, not just follow one path, but follow a couple, see which works, see which brings you back to your core nature and back to health as quick as possible. So that, just by looking at three particular asteroids, we've got a whole story coming up for Lionsgate. Again, 15 degrees in the sign of Leo is absolutely a turning point, a changing point. It's also leading into the very, very powerful solar eclipse that's happening on the 12th. And of course, you know, that might vary according to where you are. I know for me it's happening mid-afternoon in mainland Europe. But this is a very, very strong time. And this Lionsgate, I think, is about clearing space, even more space, so that when the solar eclipse comes up, you are working from a much higher level of dedication, a higher level of passion, and a much higher level of authenticity. So who knows what that's going to bring up for you. My final thoughts is I'm going to be doing a sign by sign forecast, which I'm going to be recording over the next few days, for managing the eclipse season that we're in right now. And I really think this eclipse is going to be signaling something pretty special. You know, this is aligned with Lionsgate. This is aligned with this quarter point, this change point in our year. It's also super aligned, you know, with Isis and Osiris, which is fascinating. And of course, this is the year where Neptune changed signs, Saturn changed signs, Chiron has just changed signs, Uranus has changed signs, the nodes have just changed signs. So again, that marks it as highly unusual. So we have so many layers on layers on layers on layers. So this very, very powerful solar eclipse, I think, is going to be taking us all somewhere very new. So that's where I'm going to leave this today. I hope this has been helpful. These are really big times we're in. Have a beautiful time and catch up with you all soon. Bye for now.